Cool. So our second last speaker today is Richard from RITS, who's going to talk about IoT security and how it's great and awesome.
Yep. All right, so here we go, it works. So my name is Richard Dalton. I'm the technical director in RITS. So that's a recent promotion, so yay. We're like a small boutique security company, so we just do security testing, reviewing things. We don't sell products, and that's basically my sales pitch for that. So I'm going to talk about IoT security. Over 2016 and into 2017, we're obviously hearing a lot more about the Internet of Things, which is sort of a hot potato topic kind of thing. It sounds very interesting. Everyone's talking about it. And the big issue with the IoT area is going to be primarily security. It's a big issue for people selling these devices, for people buying them. They're putting it in their house everywhere. They want, internet-attached heating and light bulbs and all the rest. But there's risks associated with this, which is, how can people access this? What data is it taking? Where is it uploading it to? Who can see it? And is it going to compromise the security of my house? Can people turn up the heating and boil me to death? Can they turn on and off the lights from somewhere remotely? All these kind of annoying things. So I'm going to go through some examples on just sort of the general Internet of Things that we've been seeing with security issues first, to give you a flavor of the kind of problems that have sort of been publicized in the last year. So one there recently, well, not recently, this was 2013. It's recent to me, it's 4 years ago. But when you're in college, everything takes longer. So LG and Samsung have televisions that they sell to people. They're smart TVs. They allow you to connect to the internet. You can stream Netflix to it. You can listen to the radio and all that other stuff. But they were basically recording everything that you were doing. So the TV shows that you're watching, and a lot of people weren't expecting that. So this isn't so much as someone hacking you. This is something recording your information and sending it online. So you could plug a hard disk in. You might be watching your legally acquired TV shows from the Pirate Bay. You're going to watch these. But this was taking the file names off the hard disk. It was taking stuff that you weren't even watching. It was uploading it to the internet to LG. And why did they need to know what you're watching? I mean, this is sort of an invasion of privacy. They eventually, so you can't really see it in the slide, but this was the person who had published it. In 2013 in November, they were saying that they were logging all these USB file names. It wasn't until May in 2014, of about 6 months, that they actually fixed the problem. And when I say fixed, I mean that they actually put in a little ULA to say that, yes, we're recording you. This is the data that we're taking. But they don't really explain who the data is going to. Is it going to third parties? What are they actually using this for? So this is a problem with the Internet of Things. They're taking all this information, and we don't really know why they need it. And it's not a worry to most people. They'll accept this. But we're obviously concerned as to it's our information. We don't want to give it away. Another example here was a doll in Germany. So they're saying, it'll spew filth. This is an IoT doll. This is for children. Everyone cares about children. This is how you sell security. Think of the children. It's like The Simpsons. So the example here was that they could hack the Bluetooth to make it send messages to the children. The other problem, however, was that they were actually selling these in Germany. And Germany have very strict laws, probably from the Stasi or something, that they don't want people spying on you. So this device had a Bluetooth microphone in it that could record what your children were saying. Now the problem was this counts as a concealed device for recording. Therefore, it's actually espionage. So it meant that the German federal agency got involved and banned these devices. So actually owning one of these is sort of very grey in Germany. And in fact, you're supposed to have destroyed the devices. So again, we have another issue of, I suppose, no one wants their child being recorded, and no one wants these voice recordings being stolen. But, so there it is. It eventually gets banned anyway. But this was a problem with other children's toys. So they would have had, Hello Barbie was another one, so it could do voice recording. That was also hacked by the pen testers in the UK. That's the name of the company. It's very poorly named, I guess. But they said that you could obviously record your children through Bluetooth. I suppose then we also had VTech as well. So VTech were another company, and they were compromised. But they weren't compromised by the Internet of Things. They were compromised by the fact that they were storing all this data about your children and the parents themselves. So what happened was that all their information was stolen by hackers where their servers were controlled. So they stole about 4 million parents' accounts, and then they stole 6 million accounts for children. So I mean, how are you supposed to explain password security to children? This is a big problem. Like, they're not going to understand this, so why the hell do you need dolls attached to the internet? So anyway, what eventually happened was, this is a different one. This is Cloud Pets. They were storing the voice recordings, another doll again, I don't know why they keep doing this, for children who someone hacked their MongoDB. Now this was reported by 4 different people to the company. The company never responded to the fact that their MongoDB instance was publicly accessible. So there was, I think, 281,000 accounts on there, but there was millions of recordings of children that could have been stolen, which is a huge privacy implication for these things. So they were reported by 4 different people. Your MongoDB instance is open. There's lots of data here. We're kind of worried about this, and they couldn't find who to contact. The company never responded. So eventually, other people found the information and stole it. They were also hit with ransomware for their MongoDB, so they didn't even have some sort of operational procedure here to say, well, we've just lost all of our customer data to some ransomware hacker, and they didn't even notice that. So they had huge issues with security. So we're not just worried about the devices in the house. We also have to be worried about these devices talking back to some company who we don't even know who they are and how they secure their infrastructure, which is more than likely non-existent. I suppose the Internet of Things isn't just dolls and light bulbs and stuff. Printers used to be serial connected devices. So they were just plugged into your computer. Then someone changed them to IP-based printers. So the Internet of Things is very vague. But we have an example here of Weave, who was arrested for hacking AT&T years ago. But when he got out eventually, he decides to up the game by spewing Nazi stuff into everyone's printers across the internet that was publicly accessible. I mean, you're going to redeem yourself, you might as well do it really well. So he blasted a whole bunch of stuff into people's printers that were connected to the internet and publicly accessible. So we have all these devices where people can't secure them. They're just leaving them wide open there on the internet for anyone to connect to. So we have another problem with, when you get these IoT devices, people are doing really stupid stuff with them, like leaving them on the internet. They don't know how to secure them. They're probably not secure to begin with. The more recent example in 2016 was the Aircom modem stuff. So this was publicized November, I think. Yeah, November 7th. Basically, there's a vulnerability in the Aircom modem. Aircom ended up being reasonably lucky out of this whole thing. They said there was roughly about 2,000 modems compromised. So the vulnerability allowed on the modem was that you could basically get remote code execution. So you could access anyone's modem and find out details or run malware on it. They ended up being extremely lucky. However, who didn't end up quite lucky were the German version of this. So while the vulnerability might have been reported about Air's modems, the vulnerability was actually applicable to another company in Germany, which was Deutsche Telekom. Now, Deutsche Telekom ended up, they have a pretty large customer base compared to Ireland anyway. They obviously didn't pay attention to Ireland. We have all these modems. They didn't really care. It doesn't apply to them. But in reality, it did. They ended up getting close to 800, 900, pretty much close to 1 million modems being compromised by this malware. So someone ran through basically Air's vulnerability, couldn't get too much on Ireland's side, and went to just run across the internet. Instead, they got all of Germany's devices, which had the same issue. So they fired an exploit at it that basically ran a piece of malware on the modems that took control of them. Now the problem is, once there's malware running on these devices, they can do whatever they want. They can use it for spamming, DDoS, ransomware. They could potentially look at what traffic is on your device. They could inject whatever they want. It's a pretty good point to be getting malware onto is someone's edge device, like a modem or a router or a firewall. Those are good areas to get into. So basically, this was a huge botnet at the time. Someone was arrested in the UK recently for this. But having something that size is not something that most businesses can actually defend against. If you have 800,000 devices spewing packets at you, there's not a lot you can do to stop it, which is basically what happened to to Krebs and OVH. They got hit with about 800 gigs, per second, up to 1.3 terabytes. There's not a lot of ISPs even in the world that can sort of handle that. You'll probably be able to take some countries offline with that kind of bandwidth. No company is going to be able to really stop it unless you're paying a ridiculous amount of money to people like Imperva or Cloudflare or somewhere like that. So Myria, I'm not even sure how it's pronounced because I've not heard anyone say it, but this was the malware that was running on these devices. So previously in 2016, even prior to the Deutsche Telekom or Air or other stuff, they were scanning the internet looking for cameras, devices with weak passwords. Yeah, I mean, like this stuff got onto like Cisco devices and everything. It was just running everywhere. So all it was doing was searching for like admin, password 12345, and getting in. It just ran a brute force approach across the entire internet. And so every device that would get onto it would start trying to infect others, and it would keep propagating like this. So the person had control of quite a substantial botnet even prior to this vulnerability coming in. But what they were quite good at was adapting very quickly. So once they found out there was an exploit for those modems, I suppose quick is quite the wrong word here, but it took about 3 weeks. But the ISPs were moving slower than 3 weeks. So they adapted the exploit and they started running it for these devices instead. They got their malware working for the modems. They obviously figured out, ARMs, MIPS, these different architectures for like, these kind of devices, small little embedded chips. So they figured out, what kind of architecture it runs. They compiled their code to make sure it works. They don't have a lot of functionality as such. They're not integrating with like, databases and things like that. So it's a small little binary that they try to run. So they were quite successful, and they still are. The person released the source code, possibly to try to take the heat off them, since Krebs and a number of other agencies were investigating them. And now there's a bunch of other copycats using the same source code. So I suppose that's kind of how bad things have gotten. There's other smaller issues like, Bluetooth toilets. This is one of my favorite vulnerabilities ever. So the issue is that attackers could cause the unit to unexpectedly open or close the lid, activate the bidet or air dry functions, causing discomfort or distress to the user. Which I think is hilarious. I don't know why a toilet needs Bluetooth, but there we are. So we also have other devices. So there's sort of, I suppose, government-y, like ICS devices. They sent out warnings, basically, saying that all these devices are connected to the internet. And they had a huge list of these. So they eventually said, oh, we'll fix them all. But, I've seen those slides in the wrong order, but that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's the exact same. Someone published another link, 2017, and it's still showing like a whole bunch of ICS SCADA systems. And these control buildings. So these are like lights and heats and stuff like that. We're still at the same point where we were years ago. Here's another one as well. So this is a vibrator company. It's pretty funny, but they're getting sued for $3 million because of what they did. They were reporting the information when it was being used back to their own company. So now the company's getting sued for $3 million. If some company released this anywhere else, it's insane. So these are the repercussions to these people building these crappy devices with internet and Bluetooth and trying to siphon all your information. There is a cost associated with the fact that they're stealing your information. And that's the end outcome. And I suppose this is the slide that's in the wrong order, which is the ICS one. This is the one from 2017 from Shodan. And you can't really see it here, but there's basically a huge amount of red dots all over the place. So, nothing's really changed. So I suppose what I want to go into now is actually hacking some of these devices, which everyone thinks is the fun bit. So these are the sort of things that we see in IoT devices. So these are the different communication channels that they'll use. So you have GPRS, GPS, GSM, you'll have wireless, it could be Ethernet, Bluetooth, infrared, it's less likely these days, but it's still a possibility, and good old serial ports. As an example, we have here is one of the modems. It's a bit hard to see, but basically on OpenWRT, they have a modem here, like this one. and they'll detail what these ports are. So they actually left on in these devices, and another entirely different brand I have here, they leave in the pins so that they can debug these devices. But the problem with leaving in like debugging information, like debugging abilities like serial ports and JTAG ports and things like that, is basically it allows me to connect to it. So I have it's called a bus pirate, and it allows you to connect to the device. So you can actually plug in, and when it boots up, you can start debugging it. So even if you don't have, maybe admin access, perhaps the serial or debugging ports are some way of getting in and actually seeing these devices. So, assuming we connect that up anyway. Oh wait, I have a little bit of a demo. We'll see if this works. So, this is on the bus part. So, we can actually, if we connect it up anyway, and we plug in all the right pins, so we have like MOSI, MISO, a ground, and then we need some sort of voltage going into it. I am not an electronics engineer, so I'm pretty sure I could use some people's help if they are electronic engineers. Yes. So I have a question for you afterwards. So you can accidentally fry these devices, but if it works, you can plug in, and you can set up something like, so this is like, the one I have here is UART, which allows like a asynchronous serial device. So you can plug in, and hopefully what will happen is once you configure this, you'll give it a baud speed, some parity, and all the rest. And once you connect and you power up the device, you should start to see something coming back. So in this case, it's a modem. So you can see there it starts, this is the manufacturer device ID, some application starting up, it's Zyxel. You get a whole bunch of basically Linux kernel output. And it'll eventually drop you hopefully into a terminal. If not, at least there's tons of information dumped out. So you'll get like maybe kernel modules, other stuff that might not be easily accessible. So you get all this information back for free, which isn't maybe useful to some people, but to attackers, it's a treasure trove. So we have all these devices that people basically leave these debugging ports on that aren't needed. So this is the kind of stuff that we might see in relation to the firmware. So say we've hooked it all up, we've got access, maybe we just telneted in, SSH'd in or whatever. We'll probably see the fact that no one's updated the kernel in about 7 years. This is just the way things are. Companies get paid to write support for these devices, but once they're written, it's very hard to test, and they don't want to pay for updating kernels. It's quite laborious getting these onto these tiny embedded devices and making sure they work for millions of people. So we'll see outdated kernel modules, outdated kernels. We'll see poorly configured services like DNS, DHCP. They might connect weirdly. You can put weird stuff into DNS or DHCP to give unusual parameters, and it could be causing a security issue. You'll find that default accounts will have really bad passwords, so it'll be admin and password, and no one will change it. And you can find SSH keys on it. You can even find, they might use non-unique keys for SSH. So if they're using the same key for SSH, it means that if anyone's intercepting all the traffic, they're going to know what the key is. They'll just be able to decrypt all your SSH traffic. So that's NSA, GCHQ style stuff. So if all the Cisco routers have the same SSH key, you'll just decrypt all the traffic for the administrators. But then you end up stuff with like private keys. So they might leak certificates. They might leave private SSH keys on there. There's all sorts of issues with that. And then, they can leave backdoors. It's just the way things are. They have a habit of leaving backdoors in. I know Nev said that, manufacturers don't put backdoors in for things, but they definitely put backdoors in. So,
we don't allow government to put backdoors into...
Symantec don't put backdoors. but hardware manufacturers definitely put backdoors in. So, if we get onto the device and we download their firmware, maybe we don't even need the device. We don't need to pay for a 40 euro or 100 quid device. Maybe we'll just download the firmware and look for some problems in there. So what we can do is we can use a tool called binwalk. The binwalk is great. It extracts like tars, gzips, zips, cow images, QEMU images, anything like that. And it's great because you can figure out what's on the firmware without actually having to run it on the device. So basically there's only one real command you need, which is just extract. Hopefully, if everything works right, it actually figures out what's in the image that you're running it against. So I run it against some image that I have, and it tells me that it's Broadcom, so that's one of these devices here. It figures out that there's an LZMA compressed piece of data, and there's a squashfs file system. So squashfs is where they're going to store Linux. So all the good stuff is in there. But there's other issues if we don't have, say, the firmware. Maybe we get telnet onto this device and we want the information off it. There's usually tools on them already that can help us with that. So we have like netcat that we can just pipe information into somewhere else. TFTP, wget, telnet, FTP, SCP, SMB, ICMP, DNS. There are so many different ways of extracting information out of these systems, and they're all great ways of doing it. If you don't have the firmware and you can't figure out how to get onto these embedded devices, they always have web interfaces. And web interfaces have exploits. They say they might not, but they will. So Kieran will probably go through some of the web exploit stuff. But basically, assuming like we find something like pre-auth root remote exploits on a device for this one here, it's not Air or Deutsche Telekom anyway, it's just a different modem manufacturer. We might find an exploit like this where you're configuring a proxy on a modem and you inject a different value. So in here, for example, I'm just saying, change the name of our proxy server to what, and then inject a ping command. And assuming, look, I'm not going to explain how we find these vulnerabilities because Kieran might go through some of it. But let's say we do find this after trial and error. We're putting backticks in here just to do a sub-process command. I end up looking at my server and I end up seeing that, oh look, there's a ping coming back. So the command actually executed. So now we know that I have code execution on this device. So I want to do something interesting with this. So I need to figure out some little bit more side information. So this is another request where I set the PHP session ID, which is a cookie. So it thinks I'm logged in, but I set it as empty. And the device crops itself. And then but what it does is it prints out the path. So it tells me where the device is running this web service from. And then using that, I go back and I change my proxy command instead to dump a PHP shell onto the file system, since I know the path. So I put a little backdoor in there that basically executes whatever parameters I want to send to it. So then I can dump like their VPN key. So for example, this was a vendor that kept some public demos on the internet. So I basically got access to their internal network because they ran these demos connected to their internal infrastructure. So I could steal all their information. So for example, I was talking to Kieran, and when I got access to this device, I wanted to know how I could just reverse engineer everything else on there. I didn't have the firmware, I didn't have the device. So instead, all I did was like TFTP the entire file system onto my server. So basically, all I did was run TFTP and ran another listener over an OVH or Kimsufi or somewhere, and I just piped the file system out via TFTP, unencrypted, onto the internet to my server. And then I mounted it and started poking around at their services so I could actually root the whole thing. So eventually, what happens when you deal with manufacturers of these devices is they might issue a firmware update. So they fix the issue. It's a few months later, you've had a couple of thousand people possibly affected by this, great, so they fixed it. And how they tell you they fixed it is, these are the release notes for blah. This release mainly includes a bug fix to improve the reliability of the product. In view of ever-changing security landscape, the firmware is meant to harden the security of the existing blah product name. So they haven't actually told you what's wrong with it, they just said that they fixed some security stuff and that's it. Where in actual fact, anyone on the internet could log into your device remotely, you could get full root, and you could run whatever the hell you want on. These were actually devices designed to protect, again, children. They're actually parental software units. And again, this is the kind of stuff you're not going to know, and they're not going to tell you when they fix these things, if they even fix them at all. So again, the issue is fixed, but no one actually knows publicly what happened. And again, they've never actually said how it was fixed, and I've never told anyone. But I'm sure the InfoSec channel on Redbrick, where we all hang out and talk about this kind of stuff, they'll all know what I'm talking about. And everything in IoT is consistently like this. So you'll fix cameras, you'll report all these flaws, and if they actually fix it, it'll be surprisingly lucky. So I think that's roughly half an hour. So I think if there's any questions then in general about IoT and what a horrible world it is. Yep.
If you bought like a new IoT device,
Yeah.
like yourself,
Yeah.
what would you do to make sure it's not telling the NSA how much copy you have in one?
Yeah. So the question is, if I buy an IoT device, how do I suppose, stop it reporting back all this information? A lot of IoT devices will require to connect onto your internet. So I don't really want a doll that connects to the internet, so I just won't configure it. However, if there's obviously some critical functionality where you do, what you can look yourself kind of thing. You can plug it onto the network and you can span the traffic off, and you can see what it's sending and to where. And hopefully it won't be sending it to some Chinese server recording all your SMS messages, which is what some vendors actually did as well. But at least you'll be able to tell potentially what it's doing and what the risk is. Otherwise, what you can do is you can plug it in and hope to God that you actually have a real device that can do firewalling. So you could isolate it away from everything else. So you could put it in a VLAN, you could put ACLs in front of it and then stop it from communicating. Or only allow it to communicate to some server that you want it to. Which is quite difficult for home users, which is why there's such a problem with IoT, which is they don't tell you what they're taking, which is an entire issue unto itself. So it's difficult. But yes, if you can isolate it, then that is the approach I would take, or just not turn it on. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the dolls back in 2013, how Germany banned them.
Actually, they only banned them this year. So at the beginning of this month, or last month, they banned those devices.
Was that after the cloud testing?
Probably, yeah.
My question was, how did cloud tests be allowed to company if they were technically espionage?
So
If it was only possible everything else.
So the problem is no one was actually taking a close enough look into what these devices are doing. So there's no real. If you can sell these things, no one's going to stop you. Like unless someone actually starts investigating and putting a ban on these devices, no one's going to stop you from able to sell them. It's sort of free market economy thing. The problem is you don't know who these third parties are sometimes, and a lot of times they're even outside the jurisdiction of where you are. They're just going to be some Chinese company selling them in. People are going to buy them off Amazon. There's going to be multiple resellers. The perfect example is camera software, which you can buy on Amazon. They're just going to be mass manufactured and then rebranded to some other company. But in theory, only one or two companies are actually selling these devices. There's just going to be a million different models with a different web interface, different branding, but they'll all have the same issues. So I think the Sony cameras were like one of the examples, and there's been a multitude of those devices where they're just the same system but rebranded. And it's very difficult to stop that unless, I suppose, researchers or they're actually doing their own due diligence and pen testing these devices to find security issues. Yeah.
Why are people so stupid?
It is.
Everything you said, it seems like people seem to be the problem. Like, this is a great functionality, let's send everything over the internet.
Money is the problem and the human nature. They want an easier thing, and it's the path of least resistance. So you pay for this device and then you hope that it works. And people are going to buy this anyway because it makes their life easier. So really it's just the fact that they're selling the security of their information for an easier life, which is what everyone does. It's why the internet is quite successful. You're selling your information to Google or Facebook because you're the product. It's the same thing with like the Internet of Things. You're just selling something that's valuable to you, which is probably your privacy. Yeah?
What kind of trick they have to use to convince people to connect their vibrator to the Wi-Fi?
I have no idea, because that was only today, so it's not like I've intimately bought this product to research it. So I don't know. I assume that there's something critical to do it. It's probably the same as every IoT device now, which is that you can look something up on your phone and it does something remotely. Which I think we can all guess what that is. Yeah? No.